Hey everyone, welcome to the Season 2 premiere of Rattling the Cage. I'm your host Caroline Deason, and I'm just popping in to give some information before the episode starts. I know it's been a long time since our last episode. I'm sorry about that, but you know, the whole global pandemic and everything. My co-host Dylan decided that he needs to step back, so from now on it's just me. I'll be having guests on the podcast to talk about Nick Cage movies from here on out. So thanks so much for your patience and continued support. And I just wanted to let you know too that this episode has some editing and audio issues because of course it does, since it's the first one back after so long. So thanks for your patience. I hope you enjoy this episode and let's get right to it. So Don, I'll have you introduce yourself and just let me know if there's anything you want to talk about specifically, and maybe just tell me how you even found Rattling the Cage, because I know that you have been one of our supporters since the very beginning of the podcast.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Don Buley, pronounce he, him. I have been a fan since the beginning. We've been kind of I'll say internet pals. Like occasionally, like we have quite a few similar interests.
Our internet friendship goes way back, way before Rattling the Cage.
Yeah. I was like, wow, how long have we been just like trading the odd reply now and then? And all the way back in 2014. I have a lot of time on my hands right now, so I had time to scroll I just searched both of our names, like how far back, and I just kept scrolling. So yeah, I'm a big fan of you.
Oh, nice, thank you.
Likewise. Thanks. Yeah, you're a delight. You're one of the few people I know that watch the Peep Show as much as I do.
Yes, I was thinking about that today. That I was like, I hope we get to talk about Peep Show, because Don and I do end up trading news about Peep Show whenever that's relevant.
And sometimes like I'll go fishing for stuff, and I'm like, hey, I found this. So yeah, you're also one of the few people I know personally that plays Elder Scrolls Online. So like we've like over the last 7 years, well, that sounds insane to say, but like we just like, you know, we find we have found in each other like certain things we share. And when I saw you were doing a podcast, like of course I'm going to listen to your podcast.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a child who developed with TV and movies, so Nicolas Cage is kind of like my Moses.
Oh.
Can
you speak on that more? I want to hear more about
Sure.
Nick Cage Moses.
It's only a matter of time before he does that story.
That's true.
So like, you know, I have big movie star people who are big in my childhood as like, I know this person from this thing, and they're like a constant. And Nicolas Cage, over my life, I'm 33, so over my entire life, there hasn't really been a year or two where it's like, I want to check in and see what Nicolas Cage is doing. I was real little when I saw Valley Girl, and that strongly painted a picture of California and that didn't leave for a solid 20 years.
That's a deep cut when it comes to Nick Cage movies.
Yeah, nice. I didn't realize that till I was an adult, and everyone's talking about like, oh yeah, Face Off, Gone in 60 Seconds. I'm like, oh yeah, did you guys see him in Valley Girl? Crickets.
Yeah.
My toxic masculine friends at the time, you know, bonding over movies, it was crickets when I apparently not.
It seems like the type of movie that Dylan would have picked in his trade on and off. Oh, and I should say too, just sorry before you keep going, Don, that
please.
This new format, the guests are picking the movie. So,
yep.
Yeah. So anyway, please keep going.
Yeah. So, there was always something. He's always doing stuff. Con Air is one of the, I have, to put it mildly, a complicated relationship with my parents, but damn it, if Con Air was on some weekend afternoon, that was something where it was like a ceasefire, an armistice, where, you know, I don't know their perspective, but me silently loathing them, but like we're still bonding over this thing because this is our thing. And so yeah, I go
Oh,
way
that's
back.
nice.
I'm not like encyclopedic by any means. But like he has just always been there, like the cool crazed eyebrow uncle that I always wanted to have.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm also not at all encyclopedic, as you know from listening to
Yeah.
the podcast. And so yeah, this is I really appreciate that perspective, because I hadn't really thought of that, but it's true that it's he's definitely been a constant, even if it wasn't, I can't remember what the very first Nick Cage movie I ever saw was. Um but yeah, even though it's not, it doesn't go as far back as you with Valley Girl,
Mm.
but yeah, I like that perspective a lot.
Yeah. The era that I watched that, I had a friend. I was in fifth grade, fourth grade, and my one of my friends, she was like, "We watch a lot of boy movies. Let's watch girl movies." And I'm like, "Okay." I mean, at the time, I mean, I was in a climate, a culture of I knew what she meant, and she was right.
Right.
I'm like, okay, I'll watch stuff. So, in one afternoon, we watched Valley Girl, Tank Girl, and then Spice World.
Okay, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Did all of these 2 out of 3 of these movies had the word girl in it, and Spice World only doesn't have the word girl in it because it's implied, because they
Mm-hmm.
were the Spice Girls. So
Exactly.
were these girl movies like in a very literal sense? They had to be.
uh, we were both 10, 11. So, like, when she said, instead of watching the violent action movies,
Right.
we watched Tank Girl, which was quite violent action
I
movie,
was
but
just about
like,
to say that's, yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
not what I would think of. It's not a girly movie in
yeah,
that
yeah,
way.
but
Yeah.
yeah, she brought up, she had a point where like most of the movies, we would watch and talk about. I Movies and TV is how I connect with people.
Mm-hmm.
So this friend, she brought up a good point, and I think that is kind of where I started to open my eyes to kind of the bullshit that was gender norms and all that kind of thing. So like
Oh, that's nice then. I'm
it
glad that your
was
friend did that for you.
yeah, they're not in my life anymore. I don't think about them ever, but when I was thinking about like, oh yeah, talking about Nick Cage, yeah, she was kind of my introduction to that. And yeah, we had a very good time of that. So
Had she seen Valley Girl before she showed it to you?
oh yeah, she had the
Ah.
VHS. Yeah, she had them
Ah.
all. Yeah, she was just like, instead of watching, uh Arnold, Sylvester Stallone, like, Bruce Willis, like she wanted to watch something where the leads were um
We're women
uh
instead.
were women. And I'm like, "Oh
Yep.
wow, yeah, that makes sense." And like I don't think about it often, but like that's kind of where my brain started to be like, "Oh, you know what? We are fed a very specific thing with a lot of things." And it's kind of weird how like that afternoon spiraled into kind of who I am, and I'm kind of marveling at it right now.
Nice. Well, that's good. Okay, well then that brings me to my next question. Why did you pick Jiu Jitsu? Because your
Yes.
your introduction to Nick Cage was
Mhm.
your awakening about, female centric movies and movies
Mhm.
that aren't kind of machismo and things like that. But the movie that you picked for today's episode
Yep.
is a movie that came out in 2021, which blows my mind, by the way,
Yep.
because it is currently, right now, December 9th, 2021. This movie
Mhm.
came out. I think I saw some like weird things where I think it came out at the end of 2020, but it's like it was in theaters in 2021. I'm not entirely sure. But it's
Yeah.
like a year old, and it feels
Yep.
so much older than that. And I don't mean based on like the actual movie's content or anything. I just mean that time in the pandemic has gone so in like it's just compressed and
Mhm.
you know stretched at the same time. It's very strange.
Yes.
So anyway,
Uh
that's what we're talking about today. The
yeah.
2020. I'm gonna just double check. I thought that
Yeah,
it
it
because it
said
said
2020 on mine, but I think it was one of those things where it was held for release, but it like they still had to like promote it, and then like
right.
they couldn't really share it, and then yeah, I
Yeah,
did see your
November
tweets.
20th, 2020.
Yeah, I did see your tweets around it, and I do want to talk about those because they were a delight. But
Oh,
yeah,
well, we
this
will talk about that.
yeah,
But tell me, why did you pick jujitsu?
uh well, I started off by like, okay, I'm going to choose a movie that I have access to, so I went to the various streaming services that I have, and I'm like searching Nick Cage, and I'm looking, and I'm like, I know that, I've seen that, and I was like looking for something that didn't catch my eye, and the jujitsu movie poster has a young Asian woman holding a sword as the cover on Netflix, and I'm like, why is this under listing of
Oh,
Nicolas Cage? And I look at it, says Nicolas Cage, and I'm like, why wouldn't they put Nicolas Cage on the movie poster? So I went to
oh,
YouTube.
interesting. That's not the poster on the Wikipedia.
Oh wow. Yeah, I'll
Yeah,
send a pic. Yeah, it's so one of the nameless side characters in the movie.
right.
Um so I was like, okay, I'll go watch a trailer now. And I watch it, and they're like, it's a sci-fi romp. It's jujitsu martial arts, and then I'm watching it, and I'm like, Nicolas Cage shows up, and I'm like, oh my god, this is Sorcerer's Apprentice, but instead of a crusty magic user, he's a crusty martial artist training the hero, I
Right.
guess. And I'm like, okay, I don't think I'm gonna get any luckier than this. So I was like, I have this. Can you want? Is this? And you were cool with it. I sent the trailer before, I
Mhm.
wanted everyone on board before, like I didn't want to just like, here's some dog crap.
No, no. And you can find some dog crap when you're looking through this man's very prolific career. Um,
Yes.
but Jujitsu is actually a movie that was already on my radar because of it being part of this kind of Nick Cage renaissance, because it only
Mm.
came out a year ago, and he's had so many movies come out recently. And this was one that Dylan used to send me um kind of like production updates on this movie, because we were both
Oh,
kind of
really?
so enraptured with the idea of him playing this martial artist. And there was
Mm-hmm.
some great photos of him on set and stuff like that. And so when you picked this, I thought, oh yeah, definitely. It ticks a lot of boxes for me because I love martial arts movies.
Mm-hmm.
I like that it was a more recent movie, because we have been tending towards kind of older and in some cases quite obscure Nick Cage titles. So I was
Mm-hmm.
on board with that. And I didn't know about the sci-fi angle. I didn't watch the trailer, so
Oh, okay. Oh,
I have
okay.
this
Nice.
I have this thing where I don't watch trailers. I try really
Oh,
hard to avoid watching trailers,
okay.
and most of the reason is because I don't want to, I want to kind of go in with an open mind, unless of course it's a movie that I've been warned about when it comes to, like, some sort of trigger warning or stuff like that. I want to
Of
be warned
course.
about triggers, but
Yes.
I try not to watch trailers because of, I don't want to come up with any preconceived ideas. However,
Yes.
the real big reason is that I just find that most trailers are like way too long and include way too
Mm-hmm.
much information, and I end up watching the trailer and thinking, okay, well, I've seen the whole movie, I don't need to see it.
Exactly. Yeah, that's definitely how it, like, I was watching some old thing months ago, and older trailers, I feel like I understand the medium, like they need to get people, they need asses in seats, and I respect that,
Hmm.
but like older trailers did a such better job of scintillating me to watch a movie rather than like, do you like this entire story we're showing you? Well,
Yep.
watch it drawn out over 90 minutes.
Yep. Exactly.
And
Exactly.
it's kind of a bummer because like I'm of an age where like I know people are saying movies nowadays are crap, but people were saying that when I was young,
Right.
and like it feels like we've gotten lazy as consumers, or they've been producing kind of just filler for us consumers, whichever way it works.
Right.
That they don't trust us to they either don't trust us to take a chance, or they're too scared to take a chance and be a little more creative in the promo material.
Yes, definitely, because they don't want to leave even anything to anybody's imagination.
No. Yeah, here is the message. You are going to agree with it.
Yeah.
Please give us 50 monies.
And I'm so glad you brought this up, because the interesting thing about this movie, having watched it now, is that this is one of the few movies, I think, that watching the trailer and just kind of going like, oh, that's great, I don't need to see the movie, is maybe a better way to experience this movie. Because going back and watching the trailer now, and even just like reading, if there's a quick synopsis, I was reading this article about it where this is an article from originalsin.ca. So that's a Canadian movie, and sin is spelled with a C, so it's a very clever play on words here. And Tom Ernst has written about this movie. Tom gave this movie a D rating, but they wrote
that high,
right? Yeah. So they wrote something kind of fun here. They said, I have the benefit of a synopsis to fall back on, which in film criticism is the equivalent of a cheat sheet. The cheat sheet informs me that Jiu Jitsu is the story of a band of warriors who return to Earth every 6 years to ward off an alien attack. So, on paper, and then you add in Tony Jaa and Nick Cage, this sounds like a movie that I want to see. This sounds like the type of stupid martial arts stuff that might be, a fun way to spend an hour. Ernst goes on and says, that doesn't quite feel like the movie I saw, but there is a vague familiarity between that synopsis and what the film delivers. And I thought that was such a perfect way to sum up my feelings about what the film ended up delivering in not an hour, but in a very protracted, I think it's 100 minutes. Like it's more than 90 minutes. And I've gone on record a few times on this podcast and on Netflix saying that I don't think any movie should be over 90 minutes unless it has a very damn good reason. This movie does not have much of a reason to be over an hour, I don't think.
Nope.
Anyway, I have that off my chest now.
Okay, good. So I saw the trailer and I'm like, okay, Nicolas Cage, he's got sword, he's fighting, he's got his lines. They give him, you mentioned earlier and you said before on this podcast about this renaissance where we're all blessed to be experiencing, where like the gloves are off, the mask is off. We know he's in on the joke. We know that he knows, we're all on the same page now at this point, and he can just do whatever the hell he wants, and it's up to us if we want to bask in it. And I love that.
Well put. I love that. It could be the tagline of the show.
that freedom of just like, I just want to do this thing. Like that's if I had no dreams or ambition of being any sort of actor, but like to have that freedom of just like they sold me, and to have enough credit in Hollywood, or not even Hollywood, because these film studios, that these movies that I've been watching lately that have him in it, they're not 20th Century Fox, they're not Sony, they're not kind of Marvel, they did, but he's going to these other places, some of these people I've never heard of, and he's just showing up and showing out, and collecting whatever paycheck comes, if it comes, and like he doesn't care. He's just there to have fun, and that's so freeing and refreshing. As I sit around and I see like machinations and plots of like how people are going to maneuver their stardom for this and that, and it's just so nice to see this dude getting older and older each year, just not caring.
Yes, I agree. And yeah, we've gone on record on the podcast saying the same thing, that we're happy that he seems to be embracing that. And I'm of the opinion that he's always embraced that, and he gets criticized for that. He gets criticized for doing the paycheck movies, but like fuck man, he's an actor. That's what you do. But the thing is that speaking about the paycheck, this the budget for this movie is $25 million. which I looked up, and that's considered a lower budget movie, which fine, I understand. The box office, according to Wikipedia on this movie, the box office, I guess this would be return, was $99,924. This did not even break $100,000. I didn't know how to search this, but I would be interested to know. There must be a statistic online somewhere, like a list of movies that, had the biggest ratio of like budget versus to box office gross or whatever. Like, and I would be interested to see where this sits in there.
Yeah.
I'd also be interested to know how much Nick Cage and Tony Jaa got paid, because both of these people, I mean, to different extents, but both of these people are, we're not talking about B-list actors like the rest of or C-list actors like the rest of the cast here. These are two guys who I assume, had a certain price tag. But it would be interesting. I'm not sure if this is like something that the podcast, really needs to talk about or anything like that. But if you wanted to kind of make a real case for whether or not Nick Cage is doing this for fun or if he's doing it for the paycheck or whatever, it would be interesting to see how much he was paid for a movie like this that grossed so little in comparison to what the budget was. Or not even in comparison to what the budget was, just in general. Like, that's such a small amount of money for a box office.
Precise. Yeah, that's it's a huge loss. No matter how you slice it, some people took huge losses in this. And a part of me, like, the movie is what it is, and I'll get into, I'm not really going to defend the movie, but I had a good time watching it. I only watched it for this. So, like, I mean, I'm sure eventually I was going to watch it, but like, I'm fine with what this movie is. But on another side, like, the pandemic has just ravaged so much, of media, how we consume it, how we get it. I can't help but wonder, like, the number is bad. Not breaking 100,000 is bad, but the options given, how much was it set up for success?
That's true.
Like, it's.
I just
I
kind
heard
of assumed
nothing.
that box office meant like has been adjusted. You know what I mean? Like, I just kind of assumed that what I'm comparing this to would still be comparable to what it would have received like non-pandemic. Do you know what I'm
Sure.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
But yeah, that's a very good point. I didn't actually think about that. I don't know if this is just based on actual box office, which were all closed for the last, however long. So, what's the point in looking at that? Or if this is, streaming and all these other things as well.
True. Yeah. Yeah, so the term box office is a little weird in these times, and there's a whole conversation that we don't have to get into because I'm not even qualified for it, of like, there's that argument of like James Cameron and these big titans of the industry thumbing their nose at streaming services and how it's ruining cinema TM.
Right.
It's like, no, we're just in different times.
That's true.
Cameron.
Yeah. For sure.
So,
I hadn't really considered that part of it. So maybe it's not as huge of a loss.
I think it's still a huge loss. I think it's,
I mean, on like the actual brass tacks of it is that yes, they got paid.
Huge loss. But like in the great annals of cinema history, like, is this year just exactly right? That's what I was gonna say. Should this year, anything that released, everything, if it did good or bad, should have an asterisk. Like, come on, guys, cut us some slack. We're lucky we had anything. We're lucky we didn't have just 45 movies of people on webcams looking at each other.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad I haven't seen too much of a glut of that kind of film, because that's just depressing.
Yeah, that's funny. There was like films. The only film that comes to mind is that one that was like, it was like a Facebook horror film that came out even before the pandemic. So that sucks. They already, they already blew their great idea before the pandemic. But let's talk more about Jiu Jitsu.
Yes.
So I made some notes while I was watching, which I normally make notes, and there's definitely a time where at some point I kind of put my pencil down and I was like, I don't need to keep taking notes.
Same here.
But so the movie opens with credits that go on for way too long, about 10 minutes of opening credits. And this is actually a great indication in retrospect of the type of movie this is. So I've mentioned something like this before, where sometimes people seem to make movies and somehow get people like Nick Cage to star in them, where no one has told them that they need to start editing things down, and that they are kind of just availing themselves of every possible trick in, their magical bag. And I saw some people online criticizing this movie for using this like funny comic book effect that people were criticizing it as being looking like it's just like the Apple photo booth.
Oh no.
Yeah, like it's like it doesn't look like an artist did it. It looks like, someone ran it through a filter type of thing. And that's kind of what, the opening sequence, the opening credits. Well, the opening sequence is also too long. The whole movie is too long. The pacing is atrocious, but the opening credits, the opening sequence and the opening credits, was the very first note that I made. And then I noted that we right away have, we see Nick Cage immediately. So, the director, whose name is Dimitri Logothetis, or Logothetis. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. It's a Greek name, obviously. And he gives the audience what we want, what we came for. Not even if you have a Nick Cage podcast, this is, the marketing of this movie, other than the Netflix poster that you're alluding to, heavily featured Nick Cage, which I was a little confused, because I have this confused in my mind with another movie that has come out in the same time period of this Renaissance, where Cage only has like one line, and I don't know which movie it is, and I was a little worried actually after we started watching it last night. I was like, shit, is this that movie where he's in it for like 30 seconds, but they went crazy on the marketing? Because not that I don't think that, there's something to talk about there. However, I do think that the first episode in like 2 years or however long it's been since we released an episode probably should be a movie that focuses on him a bit more. So I was really glad that this does focus on him quite a bit. And in fact, I think that his kind of secondary character aspect to it, or even tertiary maybe, I don't know, we can debate that, is first of all perfect for, the role and everything. He was the right pick for this. But it's actually a nice way to kind of, get back into talking about him, because as, you kind of mentioned, these are the types of roles that he's taking these days, is this, and the point to this role is that he's this eccentric martial artist, and I'll comment more about that later, who lives in a cave and has very very confusing relationship to the rest of the movie, and the rest of the characters. But what I was trying to say is that the second thing that I noticed is that there's another actor who I recognized, who is Eddie Steeples from My Name is Earl.
Yep.
Yeah, and so he was great in My Name is Earl, so I was like, wow, there's like a few people who I recognize in this, and that was when I understood that the movie was going to be bad, because the script was so bad at that point that someone who I know is a decent actor couldn't do anything with it. And so it's not the opening scene, and it's not the even secondary scene, but it's when you see Eddie Steeples, that's when I was just like, oh boy.
Yes. I had to look up his name after the movie, during the movie. I was on IMDb the entire time.
Yep.
Trying to place any of these faces and names. So I'm watching, and I see him like, I know that facial structure. And I'm like, is that Crabman?
Yeah, it was.
And I know him as Darnell Crabman from My Name is Earl. I forgot his real name.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay. Then I start hearing his lines. I'm like, he was better in My Name is Earl.
Oh yes.
And it's just, and to your point about the opening scene being way too long, it absolutely was, because I came in with the trailer mentioned something sci-fi. They said the word sci-fi somewhere in the trailer. I'm like, okay, cool. This is in my wheelhouse. The comic book panel
Uh-huh.
intro, the Apple Studio, you call it. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's exactly right. And it's like at the time I'm like, okay, this is an adaptation.
Right,
And
exactly. Yeah.
they did this in the Ang Lee Incredible Hulk movie, or no, the Ang
Exactly.
Lee
They did.
Hulk
Yes.
movie.
And
Yeah.
I defend that. I think that was a really
Hmm.
cool choice that
I
Ang Lee
love
made.
it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like comic book movie with comic book panels, the different angles of the panel. Like, I'm not gonna make a whole podcast about it, but like that movie gets a lot of rightful garbage thrown at it. But like the camera, the structure of the panels, like that was actually inspiring.
Yes.
And
Yeah, I agree.
so I see that, I'm like, okay, I know what we're doing here. This is,
Mm-hmm.
the font is comic book style. Like, all right, let's go.
Yep. And the font
Let's
was
get
almost
over.
yeah, exactly. Let's we understand. Let's get to it. And this
Yeah.
happens. This is a motif that comes up again and again in the movie, kind of as like a transition between scenes where they
Yeah.
will just take a scene from the movie and comic bookify it with
Mm-hmm.
this what I assume to be and what the internet seems to think is a filter. And then they'll have kind of like just a single word or like two words that kind of
Yes.
introduce the next scene. And it reminds me of
Meanwhile,
right, but it's not even, it doesn't even make as much sense as meanwhile. Like it's usually like it reminds me of remember when to watch movies on DVDs. I'm making it sound more ancient than it is, but I don't ever use a DVD anymore. But
mhm.
when you watch a movie on a DVD, the scenes have chapter titles, right? Things that
Yes, yeah.
and I think that you can see that. Like I was watching a movie on Apple TV the other day, and as I was fast forwarding it, it was a movie I've seen. Well, no, I've seen it a million times. I was like,
Oh, okay,
going repeating a scene that I wanted to see again, and then fast forwarding past it.
gotcha.
Anyway, I noticed that it did show some. It was Home Alone, by the way, so it did show
Oh,
how
nice.
it had these chapter titles at the bottom as I was
Yes.
fast forwarding. And so I guess there is like a way to do that, maybe not on Netflix and things like that, but other ways. But those are always interesting because they kind of give a little bit more insight into, what the scene is supposed to be about. These title card type things didn't really give me a lot of insight. Maybe you'd have to watch the movie again, which I promise you I'm not going to do.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking that too. Like with the context after the movie, the transition title scenes make sense. Reunion, I don't remember the other ones, but like
Okay, yeah.
if you have the context, like these people made this movie, and in editing they had seen the movie,
Right, exactly.
and
So
I,
it's insider
I
information.
exactly. I kind of run into this when I'm like making a podcast title. I'm like, okay, it has to be something a little punchy that happens in the session, and then when you listen back, like, oh, that's why it's titled this. Like, that's
Exactly.
fine on a second-rate podcast adventure, but like,
Right.
you can't really do that and pay off because we're only talking about it this in this level of detail because this show is that level of detail.
Right,
The
exactly.
common person is going to be like, and
Yeah.
just move on
They're not
and
at all
never think
helpful.
about this again. Yes.
Exactly. And help is something that I really could have used.
Mm,
I am confused about what was going on in this movie. So I
yeah.
wanted to say that like the premise, the idea of a movie, a martial arts movie, especially one that has Tony Jaa, really appealed to me because I
Yes.
love martial arts movies and
Mm-hmm.
I have been a big fan of Tony Jaa martial arts movies for God, like 15 years or however long now.
Yeah.
And so movies like Ong Bak or The Protector, these movies that, in as far as I can tell, really popularized Muay Thai,
Mm-hmm.
and really made it, the kind of hot new martial art. Because when I was a kid, I was in karate because of Power Rangers. Like I love Power Rangers, and
Oh
so
my
I was
god,
like,
I'm so glad that we have this to bond over now too. Yes, Power Rangers.
yes.
I'm watching the choreography. I'm like, this is like barely a step away from Power Rangers fight choreography, and
So this is exactly what I was gonna say. Is that
yeah.
this movie reminded me I hadn't seen the Power Rangers movie, so I actually can't compare it to the Power Rangers movie, and I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to speak ill of something I haven't seen. But this movie was like if someone had tried to take the 22 minutes of a Power Rangers episode and said
Mm-hmm.
you need to take one episode and turn it into 90 minutes, that's what this
Yes.
movie is. There's not enough content, and there should not be enough content for a 90-minute movie, but it's got kind of all of the, hokey, silly things that a Power Rangers episode does, and kind of, if I'm gonna be honest, the same level of martial artsing, which is kind of funny when you're thinking about people like Tony Jaa being in it. But the other thing too is I'm watching this, and there's a couple of good fun beat 'em ups. There's the director obviously knows who Tony Jaa is and knows that Tony Jaa is famous for being in movies that have very long single cut scenes. I'm thinking The Protector is the one that I tweeted about, has this really famous long scene where it's a single shot scene, and he literally fights his way up and then down at 4 floors of a building or something like that. And these are super famous. That was, I think, I've talked in the past about how obsessed I am with single shot cuts, and that's probably the first one I ever saw. And so I'm watching this, and they have that, they pay homage to it here by having, when Tony Jaa's character is introduced, he also has this single shot. And I watched really close, and as far as I can tell, it is legitimately a single shot. It's not the fake one that has kind of like the funny cut that makes it look like it or anything. It's a legitimate long single shot of him fighting through a U.S. Army base, which, maybe we'll comment about. I promise I'll let you interject.
You're good. Yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to mention from the get-go that I'm watching this, and I know that Tony Jaa is a Muay Thai expert. I know that he's famous for Muay Thai. I know that, he's jumping around and hitting people in the face with his knees and flying through the air. And I'm thinking back to a couple of the scenes before that where people are, sparring with their hands and everything. And then I'm starting to think, like, isn't Jiu Jitsu the one where they roll around on the ground? And so I have a friend who is who does Jiu Jitsu.
Yeah.
Because I Googled it, and I found like a Reddit post where people were like, there's no Jiu Jitsu in this movie, and I was like, well, I'm not sure if I want to have them as my number one source or whatever. So I messaged my friend, and I'm like, have you guys, like, at your Jiu Jitsu gym, have you talked about this movie called Jiu Jitsu at all? And he wrote back and he said, yeah, it doesn't have any Jiu Jitsu in it. If you want to see a movie that has Jiu Jitsu, you should watch something like John Wick. And I was like, I love John Wick, but also I don't care about Jiu Jitsu. I just wanted to be certain here that this movie actually doesn't really have a lot of Jiu Jitsu in it.
Yep.
Which is so perfect when you think about it, because this has just moved this movie from, like, a B movie type of thing to a C movie in my mind.
Yeah, exactly.
Because this director really has no idea what the fuck he's doing.
It's mind-boggling, because clearly they don't know or care that jiu-jitsu is an actual real thing. Like, it's like Nicolas Cage says several times, given jiu-jitsu. Was this supposed to be like shiatsu? Like, did he give us and I'm just I
think he calls the main character Jiu-Jitsu. I think he says, like, you are Jiu-Jitsu or something too.
And are you the personification? And I'm watching, like, the early fights, like, there was enough acrobatics that I'm like, okay, you know what? It's I don't know it well, but I know enough, like, this is kind of close. But when it got towards the end fight, the lead actor, who I'll never be able to place in a lineup, is like just doing like full on punches, and like that's not even martial arts, my friend. That's your fist fighting.
Well, it's still martial arts, but it's like, it's not at all what, like, the grappling and the, there's a couple of scenes where they have, like, someone holds someone else in a figure 4 type of thing and stuff like that. Yeah. And, like, there's a little bit of grappling, a little bit of, like, submission move type stuff. But there's huge parts of the movie that are about sword fighting and, like, using kendo sticks and other
Yeah, so
Ninja stars. Like that's how the
ninja.
movie opens.
Yep, yep. The shuriken flying all around, and I watch with subtitles. I don't really
Yeah.
have hearing problems, but I'm one of those people who, even if I can hear it perfectly well, I like to have subtitles because I get little nuggets here and there, and the nuggets that I got from this movie were the character names from
Yeah.
this because I didn't. They never said his name, the lead, Jake, until they're running on the walls. They're running on top of the wall, trying to escape the. I don't think it's army. The intro people called them, take them to the U.S. soldiers. That is very vague.
So why
Whatever they
wouldn't that
are,
be? Oh, I see what you mean. They could be like
it's not.
mercenaries or something like
Yeah,
that.
it's not. Yeah, it's not the army. It's not the. And I'm looking at the patches, and I'm like, those aren't. I mean, they're not real patches, and I don't have much military experience, but like those are generic. Those are some generic suits or camo outfits they're wearing, spec ops kind of thing. But they're running, and then it says in parentheses Jake, and then the speech is hey wait, and I'm like, so he's Jake, and it's not another 10 minutes before they say his name to
Right.
anyone, and that's true with all of them. I
Spoiler.
only sorry, I
No, no,
I
no, no.
only
They gave the spoiler. They told you
oh
his name before the
yeah.
character even did.
Yeah, and I'm like Wiley. I didn't know it was spelled that way, but
Right.
that was revealed there. And so like the
Wiley is Nick
people.
Cage's character.
Yes. Sorry. Yeah. I'm on a lather, so I'll calm it down a bit. I'm just like, what is going on? Like they didn't like address characters really until they finally did, and then after that, like all the side people, his team of Power Rangers of
Uh-huh.
like I didn't get their names. I just knew them as there's two staff guy, there's Shuriken guy, there's
Yeah,
the
they're all
lady with the cool.
they're the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They each have a distinctive weapon.
Exactly, and that's how I kept them apart for the rest of the movie.
Yep.
And I didn't catch her name at all in the movie, but the lady that
Carmen.
has the Carmen is the Netflix cover for the movie, and she's got her weapon of choice is the gauntlet crossbow, and
Right.
it's just that's what drew me in. Really, I'm like, it's listed under Nicolas Cage movie. Nothing about this says Nicolas Cage to me. I'm intrigued. But
Yes, I see that you sent it to me now, and it does
yes.
look much cooler. It looks very anime. In fact,
Yeah,
the way that
I was
even
thinking,
the font
yeah,
and
like
everything.
yes, I was thinking like a Crouching Tiger kind of movie. But yeah, like I was like, what is going on with this? This is an outlier, and it said
Yeah.
Nicolas Cage, and the rest is history. So,
Right.
so it's just like the back to the fighting, the actual fighting. I have to wonder, like a professional of Tony Jaa's level, his caliber, like does he just like not does he not care? I don't know much about him other than he is very good in the roles that he plays, but I don't
Yeah.
know much about him personally. I don't know if this is just like, this is how I get into Hollywood, I'm the next, insert martial artist, become movie star.
Tony Jaa is like, I mean, he's 45 years old. Like he's not like if this is his
True.
breakout,
Yeah.
like I mean, and Ong Bak and director
Hmm.
also in Furious 7, I guess. So he's already been.
Oh, he has. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, his Muay Thai movies, still made a splash here. I think that his casting was much more of a kind of like the Nick Cage casting, where it was like
Oh,
we're gonna
okay.
bring in a bigger name, and it's kind of like this legitimacy. That woman that you're talking about, her name is Juju Chan, and she's a Hong Kong American actress slash martial artist slash singer slash she's also got her own
She had two
following
lines,
and
but yeah.
everything. Yeah, it's so okay. So let's quit beating around the bush and
Sure.
talk about our main character, who is it's not surprising that it's taken this long to talk about him. Not only because this is a Nick Cage podcast, but also the main character is, as you said, like the most unmemorable person
No.
of the whole group. He's played by Alain Moussi, who is a Quebecois stuntman and martial artist turned actor, and that kind of tells you everything you need to know. Because this guy has a certain look, and at some point
Mm-hmm.
someone was like, instead of being a stuntman, you should be the leading man, and that was a bad idea. This guy
Yes.
has absolutely no charisma, and he's playing, and bless him, he's playing a character who has forgotten everything. He has amnesia because he jumped off
Fell?
of he deliberately jumps off a cliff at the beginning of the movie, putting
Mm-hmm.
absolutely no I have no confidence in this man. Like he just
Mm-mm.
he didn't fight this thing, which at
Yep.
the time, the alien, he knew what the alien was. This was before he lost his memories, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the plot makes very little sense to me because the alien was after him before he lost his memories, meaning that he should have been fighting the alien because he would have known that he was part of the secret order that fight, like the whole reason this order exists is to fight this alien. And instead he jumps off of a cliff in a really shitty, stupid way where he like turns around mid
Yes.
fall and hits his head on a rock. And like anybody, children know that they shouldn't jump off of cliffs into water where they can't see what they're, what's
Mm-hmm.
underneath. Like this is completely normal. But if you're an elite martial artist tasked with this is honest to God the plot of the movie. An alien returns to Earth, or a group of aliens. This is another thing that I'm not entirely sure of if it's one alien or many aliens. Returns to Earth every 6 years with a comet coming through a portal, and this group of people are the ones who need to defend Earth. So it's in that way it's
Yes.
almost kind of like a I don't know, like kind of like a Mortal Kombat type of like they've been called
Yep.
as the best warriors in order to defend Earth against this alien invasion that happens every 6 years.
And
Um,
it's a known thing. That was
yeah,
one of my first notes. Was like, oh, every 6 years they have a really pretty comet. How lucky for them. Because that comet was very beautiful to look at. Like,
right.
I can dog the movie all day long, but like I was like the scenery they painted before the story got in the way was like, oh, this is kind of a beautiful part of the world. I knew they were near Burma because the captions told me in Burmese. So I'm like, okay, cool.
Right. Yeah.
This isn't stereotypical bland location in California, at least not from what I could tell. It looked like it was a nice area. It looked good. And every 6 years, there's this comet. The world experiences this comet, but for these 9 people and whatever weirdo, too smart for their own good, military tech guy,
Mm-hmm.
knows that this spells potential doom for the world.
Right. And so after hitting his head on this rock, Nick Cage's character and a fisherman bring him, you know,
Mm-hmm.
onto shore, and the fisherman's family nurse him back to relative health and bring him to this military outpost in order to, because they see a white guy and they're like, we'll give him to the other white guys because
Yes.
you're probably together. That's a fit white dude. You're probably with the other fit white dudes.
Yes, you look
Um,
like every other white dude over there. You must be one of them. Let us dump you in our let's dump you off in our truck.
right. And so they take him over there, and the military officers or whatever. Don's not sure if they're actually military or not. This very helpful but incoherent Wikipedia plot does say it's a military outpost, but doesn't
Okay.
matter. But they're some sort of like militarized force. They have uniforms on and stuff, and they immediately treat this guy as a threat. And this very poorly cast woman starts
Mm.
interrogating him, and interrogating I'm using in the most generous way. That's like it's no wonder the man doesn't have any memories. The man's an amnesiac. He can't answer any of her questions, but even if he could, he wouldn't, because she's like just the least intimidating person
And
they could have.
and she weirdly, like, she introduces this, like, are you a plutonium mule? Like, where does that come from? Like, what are you work?
Okay,
That's why I didn't think they were U.S. military, because like she's like immediate, like, are you the mule? Like
yeah,
you brought the yellow cake, and Jake, I don't want to call him a dumbass, but he's kind of is, and he's like, what
yeah.
cake? I'm like, oh my god.
Okay, this is exactly. So you've hit on the worst part of the movie for me is, and I've mentioned it before,
Yes.
is the script, but the dialogue is absolutely abysmal. This man
Yes.
has lost his memory. I would say a good 70% of the movie is characters, and sometimes the same characters who've already asking him, "You don't remember?" And then he's like, "No, I don't remember." And they're like, "You don't remember?" Like immediately afterwards. I'm not joking. There's a
No.
scene I took a video of it and sent it to my friend
Did
because
you?
there's a scene when he first meets his group of so he's reunited with this group of Power Rangers.
Mhm.
And they all know him obviously, but he doesn't remember them at all. And there's a good like 6 lines back and forth of this one character being like, "You don't remember us, do you?" And he's like, "No." They're like, "You don't remember us at all?" "No." "Wow, you don't remember us at all?" Like I'm not joking. It's the same line over and over and over
Yes.
again of
You
them
don't
back and
remember
forth.
this? Like, I'm
Yeah,
like, oh my god, we get it.
yeah,
You
and
drove it home.
with like some like pregnant pauses in between to try and like heighten this drama, and it's just unbelievable. Like I don't understand how these actors weren't like, "Hey, can we maybe not? Like is there could we could probably uh you know tighten this up a little bit." Like at what point do
Yeah.
the actors just not care anymore? Because unless the director was so very like, "No, no, 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 no. You need to say exactly what I've written." There were 2 writers, two people needed to write this screenplay, by the way. So maybe the maybe the writers were just very adamant that every word that I've written you have to say. But my goodness, so much of this could have been cut. And then characters constantly are surprised that this man cannot remember things over and over and over again, as if this is like the big crux of the movie,
Yes.
that not only does he have amnesia, but all of them immediately get amnesia. But the fact that he has amnesia, like it's just mind-boggling. And this is the type of thing that I've said before, where it's kind of like this is the type of script you write in your grade 9 drama class,
Mm-hmm.
like where it's like got amnesia, and then everybody's like, "Oh, you don't
Yes.
remember anything."
Yeah.
"Oh yeah, I don't remember anything," and then that goes on forever. And when you're like 13, that rules.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Yeah. Martial arts plus memory wipe plus amnesia story.
Exactly.
Oh my god, sign me up.
Plus aliens, plus like
Plus
random,
aliens.
yeah, or
So
alien. We're
I
not
will
entirely
give it
sure.
this. The movie, I don't know if this is really a feather to put in its cap or a condemnation of other movies, but like they didn't overly sexualize the very few female cast that were in this movie. They didn't give them
Right.
lines or characters or personalities, but you know what? That they didn't, show the bits for that kind of like there's definitely those martial arts movies looking you Jean-Claude Van Damme where like a lot of sex sells, and in this one
Yes.
like asexual as probably one of the most asexual movies I've ever seen.
Right.
Which
And
could be a good thing.
there's this implication that the main character and her name in the movie is Carmen,
Hmm.
are in a romantic relationship because she hugs him when she first sees him, and of course they make out at the end of the movie. But you're right, there's no like gratuitous sexual anything.
Yeah.
There's not even a lot of there's not even a lot of gratuitous violence, um
Mhm.
other than like martial arts violence. There's not like a ton of blood and gore or anything like that. um and there's not any, as far as I remember, any kind of like awful language. Am I wrong about this?
Not, I mean, there was exclamations. Some of them were curse words, but like nothing dramatic. Uh, yeah. Where was this
I think
rated?
this is a kids movie now, the more that
This
I
is a
think about it.
rated.
Like,
It's rated R though.
oh,
I'm
for
looking at it
fuck's
on
sakes, are you
Netflix,
kidding me?
and it's rated R.
Oh, so no, they
The
didn't. They didn't know what they were doing at all.
they didn't know what they had. They didn't know how to do it. And so it's listed as offbeat, slick, and exciting.
Okay.
It was kind of slick how they had a lead in this movie who wasn't what anyone wants to see. I mean, that's kind of slick. Like, let's subvert my expectations by casting a lead of like, I don't care about this guy. One of the other Power Rangers is played by Frank Grillo, who people may
Man.
remember from Winter Soldier, the Avengers, some of the Avengers
So
movies. Like,
he's the one who has the whole like, you don't remember, do you?
yes,
You really don't
yes,
remember, do you? You don't remember, do you? And I hated him. He was my least favorite of all of them.
yeah.
By the end of the
He
movie, I celebrated his death.
Same here. And just as an aside, I know him from those other movies, but what I really know him from is a bunch of the Marvel people were on a Chelsea Handler panel or something, and Frank Grillo, they were all drinking wine at this event, and that doesn't excuse what I'm about to say, but they were all just like kind of, some of them were deep in their cups, it seemed, and he talks about how rough Italians have it in the world, and how
Oh
it's
my god.
I'm paraphrasing, but he does use the term, he does use finger quotes and says blacks, and
Okay.
relates them to how the Italian struggle is also bad. So like from jump, I see this guy, I'm like, he's the bad guy. He's gonna betray you. You need to kill him. Something. So I'm going into
Oh
this like
man.
very little Nicolas Cage. Don't care about this guy. I almost cared about the first military officer who didn't. I don't recall her name, but like she has a little bit of martial arts moments when she stabs him. She does like the drop knife into the other hand grip stab
Right, yeah.
with a truth
With
serum that she
with
has
the
on her.
truth serum. Again, if this was a children's movie, it would be like fine.
Yes,
It's
the
fine. I
truth
looked it up.
serum
I
on the
actually Googled it.
amnesiac.
Right, exactly. Right. Like, but that's when she's like, guys, I think he really is an amnesiac. So maybe I guess that kind of makes a little bit of sense. But Jesus Christ.
Okay.
But okay, so we've talked a lot about the other parts of the movie, but let's talk about Nick. Let's talk about the
Yes.
actual character of that Nick Cage is
The
playing called Wiley
the second brightest celestial body in this movie, Nicolas Cage.
after the comet. Yeah.
After the
Um
comment.
so Nick is reintroduced in the I'm on a first name basis with him, by the way.
Hmm.
Reintroduced into the movie when the lead character falls into a hole, and it turns out to be the cave in which Wiley lives. And
Hmm.
right from the beginning, it's confusing for the viewer because, you know, our character doesn't recognize Wiley because of the amnesia, but the way that Wiley greets this person anyway is still very strange, and like you're not sure if there's another added level of sci-fi to this movie where he says, "I'm you," in a few years. You're like, wait a second, is that him from the future? Like, what's going on here?
I puzzled me as well. That
Yeah.
initial interaction, I'm like, he's his son. No. They're reincarnated. No. Because like when I went into this with the trailer, they talk about how this alien threat has been going on for thousands of years, and then I see Nicolas Cage fighting in the trailer, and I'm thinking, like, they kind of, I don't know, maybe I misinterpreting the trailer, but it seemed to me like Nicolas Cage is somehow an immortal who's been fighting this all, because how kind of unkempt he is in the trailer,
Right.
and then going into the movie they like, oh, this has been going on for a while and stuff, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool, so Nicolas Cage is an immortal, and that's why he's Nicolas Cage uh,
Right.
in scenes. I'm like, no, no, he
And
was just the last generation of Power Rangers.
right, exactly. He was the previous generation of Power Rangers, and he's all that's left of that generation, I guess. And then immediately proceeds to fight Jake, to fight the main character.
Yes,
Which I'm not complaining about because it was a very, very stupid, very funny fight where at one point he keeps interrupting the fight to give a little bit of
quip.
information in order to explain how eccentric he is. He
Yes.
he points out that one of his hobbies, while he's just waiting, because all he does in these 6 years is just wait for the alien to come back, and so one of his hobbies is to make paper hats, and he shows Jake one of his paper hats.
So there's a line in that conversation where he says you're gonna have, like, he's talking about how he's had a long time, like that was kind of feeding into my, like, oh, he's an immortal, he's destined to be here forever. Like, I don't know where I picked that up from, but like I was holding on to that for most of the movie until he says 6 years ago I made the same choice you did or whatever. But the paper hat.
See, this
thing,
is why you shouldn't watch trailers.
You know what?
Because you went into that thinking that.
I think it would have been better. It would have explained his crazy a little better if he had been immortal. I'm just saying. I'll write an email. But that bit where that kind of silly interruptions the hat. He kicks him into a chair and he says, "That's my favorite chair. I thought you'd like it." I'm like, "No, you didn't."
Okay, so that's why I thought that he was him from the future, because wouldn't that make sense? If he was him from the future, then he would know that that's his favorite chair as well.
Oh my god.
And he literally says when Jake falls down, he's like, "I'm you in a few years if you don't watch out."
Yeah.
So, meaning I'm you in the future. And then when he pushes him to his chair, he's like, "That's my favorite chair, so I knew you'd like it." That they're the same person. That's what I figured was going on.
And this bland Jake is so ordinary. I could see him in 20 years just, you look like Nicolas Cage now. That's fine. That's, you're so replaceable that we can mold you into Nicolas Cage. But yeah, 6 years. Jumping on his piano, the flips. I know Nicolas Cage is of an age, but I have to feel like he's smart enough to not do this. But like, I wonder how much playing around did Nicolas Cage do, trying to do any sort of imitations of whatever this martial arts was supposed to be.
So I looked it up. He did, according to the director, around 80% of his own stunts in this movie. But I want to point out, because it's very obvious when it's not Nick Cage, which is another hallmark of low budget movies. And you wonder why, like, it's just shocking when they do this cut that, it's always they are farther away when it's the stunt person, obviously. Mm-hmm. And why didn't anybody just tell the stunt guy to just slow down a little bit? Like, we cut from, this aging actor moving at a certain pace with his aging body, whatever, that's fine.
Leaning.
To then this guy who's probably in his 30s moving real quick. And it's like, just, there's no continuity here. Just slow it down a little. They should have, his character certainly seems older than he does. And they should have just got that friggin' stuntman to slow it down a little bit, because it's a jarring cut every time.
It was a little bit
laughs.
No, it's not. And it's a little bit like I kind of had the same disconnect when I saw Master Yoda for the first time flipping around. I'm like, he doesn't do that. Don't make him do that.
Exactly.
This is Nicolas Cage.
At least if you do, make it real slow. Make it, there's this part where they're doing hand stuff, which is like literally all I ever got to do in karate, was when you push someone's fist out of the way and grab their arm, and then you punch as well. So they do that for a little bit, and it's going so slow. Like, it's going as slow as I went when I was I was 6 years old doing it, right? And then it switches to this man moving very quickly, flying through the air, and it's actually I'm making it sound more interesting than it is, because it sounds funny when I'm saying it this way, but it just looks sad. Like, it's not a funny. That's my beef with the movie overall, because there are different levels of bad movies, right? And some of them are bad, and they know they're bad, and they really like gun it, and then it's fun because you get to laugh with them. This is a movie that doesn't do that, so you don't get to laugh with it. But then it's also just not entertaining and not exciting, which is one of the Netflix descriptors. So you don't even get to really laugh at it, because it's just kind of boring and poorly done.
Yes.
And that's where I feel insulted.
And you use the word sad, and the last part I'll say on the lead and the actual person we came to watch this movie for, meeting that fight, he says, "I can fly too," and he just jumps off of his chair like a child playing Power Rangers. Like
Yeah.
when Nicolas Cage says I can fly too, I was like, oh my god, here it is. This is when it's revealed. He is the badass. He is the Neo, the Matrix, whatever. And
Right.
he just this poor 57-year-old man, 55 at the time, I'm sure, just bounces off of the cushion of the chair and like, oh no,
But it's not done in a way
this,
where it's like it's not done in a way where it's like oh, I can fly too, and then oh, it's just a funny 55-year-old doing this either. Do you know what I mean? Like
no,
it doesn't commit to either one of these things, and that's what's
exactly,
so
and
sad about it.
that's what hurt the most. Is like it wasn't that he did it badly; it's that was supposed to be badass.
Yeah. So I'll point out something else about that conversation because at
Sure.
some point he says to Jake,
Hmm.
he's like giving these like one-liner platitude type things, and he says, "Game, match, set." And I said to myself, "Isn't it game, set, match? Surely, like I've never heard it game, match, set." And so then I was
Or,
like, "Oh, is it meant to be like this is his, he's not all there or whatever, right?"
yeah.
And then I was looking up that scene because I wanted to get an image of him with his paper hat on. So I
Hmm.
found it again and I started watching it on, Crave on the on demand thing. And I accidentally clicked on the version of the movie that's in French. So it's dubbed in French.
Oh,
And I found that hat scene and I got my picture. And then I just kind of let it roll for a bit. And in French, the actor who says it correctly, says game, set, match. So the script presumably said game,
hmm,
set, match, but
yep.
Nick Cage decided to say game, match, set. And the implications of whether or not this was a choice that he made
Hmm.
is the kernel of what I find so fascinating about this man because I can totally see that he would be like, no, 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 I'm going to say it wrong because my
Yeah.
character's, insane and
Hmm.
eccentric and, you're not quite sure how to read this guy and everything. I could also see Nick Cage just saying the wrong thing because
Yep.
he doesn't care. Like, because he, he's doing his job, but he's not like, I don't know, like he's distracted or whatever. And they just kept it in for reasons that are probably related to how much money it takes to shoot another scene or whatever.
Exactly.
Another
And that
take
goes
of the
into
scene.
right, and that's where I like the mystery that is Nick Cage, because I knew the line. I'm like, that's just Nick Cage saying that line, and I kind of moved on from it. I'm glad that you dug
Right.
in a little bit deeper, but then I also have to wonder, like, if it is the instance where Nick Cage flubbed a line, but this inexperienced director and set, because it's just no name stunt guy turned actor Nicolas Cage and the people operating the machinery to record the stuff, like
Yeah.
did he just not have the gall to say, Nick, I need you to redo that whole thing, that bit, and just say
Yeah.
the line right? Like, then I have to wonder, is there a conversation where Nick does that smile he does? Because now I'm on first name basis with him.
Right. Yes.
It's usually all Nick Cage as one thing, but I could see him just smiling and just saying, no, this is better. And I'm just like, this man
Yeah. And
is
he's
a
right.
jewel.
Like it is better. It is
It
better,
is.
and it's so strange to me that like the French dubbing decided to. I mean, I guess maybe they just get it's actually no, never mind. The French dubbing, they just get the script, they read the script. They're not watching the movie and
Yes.
deciding whether or not they're gonna do the same thing. That bless them. Why would they have to do that?
In some of the shows and movies I watch, like the same person will do the voice for that person in a different language. I wonder if the French person doing the Nicolas Cage in this movie does all of Nick Cage's French translations, because I know that's a thing that
Oh,
I can't remember what show it's one of the CW superhero shows. Like they met the voice talent of a different country and they bonded, and I wonder if that person has had to inhabit Nick in all of the French translations of his
that would
movies.
be very interesting. Another interesting thing about French dubs is that there's
Mm.
usually a Quebecois French dub and a France French dub, and that's because
Oh,
the
okay.
the difference between French slang and Quebecois slang is that intense that they usually have to have two different dubs of it. In fact, many of the times the movies when they're translated, even the titles are different.
Mm.
Even though it's in the same language, but for the Quebecois title is usually different than the France French title, which is just very, very funny. I wanted to point out another line that I wrote down of Nick's. So he has a scene where he's the eccentric kind of nomad type of guy, and he's at a big fire that he's made, and he's got a fish on a spit. Our hero Jake approaches him, and Nick Cage's Wiley gives him this kind of heart-to-heart about how important what Jake's doing is. By the way, Jake still has amnesia, still doesn't know what the fuck's happening. Jake has very few lines in the entire movie that aren't "I don't know" or like "I don't remember." But he asks, something to Wiley, and Wiley says, "Just remember the one thing you always have with Jiu Jitsu: leverage." So this is a joke about what Jiu Jitsu actually is as a martial art, because Jiu Jitsu is all about grappling and all about submission. And so literally leveraging your opponent in Jiu Jitsu is the name of the game.
Yeah.
So this line addresses that one of the writers, knows what Jiu Jitsu is, and I raises the question: do they also know that the movie contains very little Jiu Jitsu? Because this is kind of like this is supposed to be the big like triumphant line of like, oh, he said the name of the movie. That's the name of the movie.
Yep. If I would have made this movie, I would have called this movie Leverage. Just putting that out there.
Exactly. Which I'm sure applies to like, you could make an argument. It applies to like many of the martial arts, but specifically Jiu-Jitsu and Leverage, that makes total sense. Yeah. I know the title of the movie does it absolutely no favors in so many different ways, because it makes you question the martial arts that are going on, which is really all the movie has going for it, other than if you're a fan of Nick Cage, you get to see this performance, which by the way is not, I'm sure many of the listeners that are going to be listening to this, because I've had feedback from people who listen to the podcast that often they listen to the podcast without actually having seen the movie, and I don't know why you would, unless you have unless you're a big Nick Cage fan or whatever, or a big Tony Jaa fan or something, I don't know why you would go and see this movie, especially after having listened to the podcast about it. But so we should explain that I think Cage does a great job. Like, he was my favorite part of the movie. He's the only part that I even remotely enjoyed. He, as he always does, in my opinion, sells the character, and he buys in completely. Like, he's not half-assing it. I think that's been my opinion all along. Correct me if I'm wrong. If you're listening to this, and I've said in the past that he doesn't always buy in, but I'm pretty sure that he always buys into his role, and this is not an exception. And because of that, the movie, I mean, it would have been a heck of a lot worse if it wasn't for him. But you can see him doing the best that one can with this, as I mentioned, terrible script. And so he dies. He gets killed by this alien, who, by the way, oh man, this alien, I can forgive bad CGI, whatever. Why did they have to show every so often they make the alien have a face? And it even looks like Zordon, like from the Power Rangers, but like stupider. Yeah. And it would have been so much cooler if he just never had a face. Like, it's so much scarier for this thing to just never have a face, right? Like, why would they do that? They spent money to make this thing happen, to make this effect happen.
$25 million. That's how much they spent doing this movie. How much of that was, because it did not need it at all. Unless they're actually going to show a full face, like the weird hints at things. Like this movie isn't sinister like that, where like an alien or a xenomorph would be like, oh, what is it? Is it a predator? And they play on the predator alien stuff.
Oh my
but
God.
I'm looking at
it's a total parody.
But the actual suit that the person is wearing looks like the Netflix has a Lost in Space series.
Okay.
And there's an alien. I'll send you a picture. There's literally an alien. The quote unquote the robot. If anyone knows Lost in Space lore, like the robot that the boy befriends has that same basic look, and it was alarming at how similar it was. And it's just like, why would you why'd you skimp here? And it was just like, like I will say, for the aliens credit. The healing factor kind of looked, I mean, it didn't look great, but it looked it looked about 2 steps above Power Rangers.
How did they ever beat this guy in the past? Do they always have to throw him back into the portal? Because why wasn't that the strategy at the beginning of this? Everybody else hasn't lost their memory.
Yeah, so the way I got it was the alien has to fight 9 warriors or whatever. And if anyone refuses to fight, they destroy the planet. But if those 9 people fight bravely and or die bravely, or in Nicolas Cage's thing, beg for your life and portray yourself as crazy, like that's a layer to this that Nick Cage bought in so much that his character bought into being crazy,
right,
to escape death. But like the way I read it was, these 9 people are basically the sacrifice. They have to bravely fight, and if we as a planet don't offer them up in some way, question mark as to the organization, we're both Elder Scrolls fans. Like, I think of like the Dragon Blades. Like, who's training, or who's letting these 6? Who's the Alpha 5 bringing these 30 somethings with attitude to fight the alien threat every 6 years and to maintain that? So 9 people have to die every 6 years.
So it's like he's coming down to spar, and if he feels like if he feels, and like to the death, like not just sparring, but like it's like an honorable thing, and so when he's satisfied, he leaves. Is that the idea?
That's how I read it, and that also feeds into the Alien versus Predator plagiarism. Just like they come here, like they come through a portal, don't know, like, is this sport? Is this honor? Like, they don't really go far they don't really go far to be like, we have to do this. It's like, the only thing we have to do is be brave and die. And I'm just like, what the hell?
While you were talking, something was just jostled in my mind, and the military outpost is a legitimate military outpost. This is the American military, and I'll tell you why. Because there is a time where, near the beginning of the movie, where Darnell's character, his name is Tex in the movie, Eddie Steeple's character.
Yep.
Tex is running scared through the jungle, and one of the other people in this military says, "Do you want a Section 8?"
Oh, yeah, and that's right.
A Section 8 is, I know this from MASH, is if you're nuts.
Damn it, so did I. I was just, we were kind of like glossing over that middle 85% of the movie that didn't matter. But yes, that part it doesn't.
Yeah. There's this entire subplot, plot that's put right next to the, it's not even a subplot. I don't know. There's this entire other part of the movie with this military group that does not need to be there, and you pull all of that out of the movie, and you tighten it up to an hour. It's already looking better than it was. But yes, so one of the other military officers threatens him with a Section 8, and that would make no sense if they weren't actually military. So the way that they're running 100%. This, whatever this U.S. outpost is in Myanmar, they also make this weird joke where Jake is like, I thought it was Burma. Like, okay, like, is this a joke about how Burma is no longer? Myanmar is no longer called Burma. Like, are you supposed? How is that? How old your memory has been? Your memory's been wiped since before that change happened. I don't know. I didn't understand so much of these.
I thought it was a weird poll, but I'm like, you know what? Yeah. Like, who are you trying to connect to with this?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I'm here to see Nicolas Cage waggle his eyebrows at people. Like, you make, I don't know if this isn't a social commentary kind of thing. Like, this is just a weird ass line that 2 writers came up with.
Yeah.
The soldier thing, like, they have a guy who knows about all of this, and he's always known about it, and that's interesting, quote unquote interesting. But then, like, and then we need a group of people to be slaughtered by this thing. And who better than a collection of uninteresting U.S. GIs?
Right, who are looking for plutonium and uranium, apparently, because they have a Geiger counter. Like, what is... what was that all about either? Like, because the interrogator at the beginning is like, "Are you here for the same thing I'm here for," or something? And he's like, "I don't know what you're talking about because I literally have amnesia and I don't know how many times I can tell that to you." Yeah, and then they're out in the jungle walking around with the Geiger counter going off. That, as far as I could tell, didn't pay off. I don't want to say that I wasn't paying attention to this movie, but my God, it was difficult at certain points to really, give this thing all, even with subtitles on and even with reading along.
Yeah.
The plot is convoluted, and it also gives you no real incentive to pay attention because it's just. Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Don? Anything you wanted to touch on?
I mean, Power Rangers just all the way throughout. I definitely got that vibe. I'm going to go back, and I just watched it like 3 hours ago. So I just watched this, and it's all in my head, but like it makes so little sense when I go to talk about it. I feel like I'm missing parts, but I know I'm not because it's all right there.
Exactly. I watched it last night. And then I read about it because I was like, what the fuck is going on? So I went online and I read a couple of reviews. I read the review from Roger Ebert's website. I read the review that I mentioned earlier from the Canadian
Sin?
originalsin.ca. Yeah.
Okay.
That is a cool name. Anyway. So Original Sin's synopsis, and then this ridiculous plot synopsis on Wikipedia, and like we are not nothing we've said goes against any of those things that I read. Yeah. So I think that there's obviously something to be said about watching a movie a whole lot and having it be maybe a movie you love and then going on a podcast and talking about it. But I think that especially in a podcast where we do it, we kind of pick and choose as we go a different episode, a different movie every episode. I think there's also something to be said about being able to talk about a movie immediately afterwards and not having to think too much about it, because I trust, as I said, like I paid attention, I did my due diligence, I then went and read about it afterwards, and this is as good as it gets. I can't read into this any more than I'm giving you right now, and I think that that's helpful too. If we watched it 6 more times, I don't think we'd have anything more to say about it.
I don't think so. No, I think I guess my final thoughts on the movie is like it either needed 20 minutes to flesh out why I give a damn about the military people being there and why, like, just that, or cut that out entirely and just make them nobodies. Like, just like, oh, don't make me care. Don't involve the lead, such as it was, in like, are you the plutonium mule? If you tell me the words plutonium mule, I'm interested because I need to know, is the plutonium inside him? What's going on? Why do we need plutonium so bad that we're asking wash-ups about this? Oh, the final part. My last note that we haven't addressed was when the lady was the fisherman and his wife, presumably, were sewing him up. They were sewing up his back, and I'm like, did they cut off his angel wings? Because they were like in a like, I went into this like
that. You're right.
Like, I think of there's a movie I saw a few years back. Actually, I've watched it a lot. It's with because Henry Rollins is kind of like my Nicolas Cage. Like, I'm not the biggest punk music guy, but that man is just like lights my brain up because he's just so interesting to me. But I've watched what's it called? It's on Netflix. And He Never Died. And he plays a guy, and I don't want to spoil the movie because it's a legit kind of good. I'm biased. I think it's a good movie, but it has reveals, and he had wings and they were cut off for reasons that will be explained in the movie. And I'm seeing like these precise cuts, and they spend so much time on these cuts, and then they show the weird tattoo, like that tattoo.
Do they ever follow up on that tattoo? Is that tattoo part of because he's part of this group? Because
that
nobody
is
else has
because
that tattoo.
Oh, no one did have that. I don't remember seeing that tattoo on anyone else, but in the
They didn't even pay off the tattoo.
No, the intro, the CGI intro at the beginning had the skull. It's a skull with a
Yes.
dragon, and they even animated the skull to open its mouth and the dragon to waggle its face around,
Oh my
and
God.
nothing came from
Forgot
that.
all
It
about
didn't
this.
have a name. The organization didn't have a name. They were just jujitsus, I guess.
Yeah.
They were
And there's
given
no, like-
jujitsus, and the alien gave them jujitsu.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh my God.
It's just
They
like,
are
give me
jujitsu.
either give me 20 more minutes and actually sell me, or lose an hour of it, of the
Yeah.
stuff I don't, just none of the soldier stuff. Not a thing. You need to fight someone, he can fight anyone. They were fishermen, he could have fought in a fish market. It didn't have to be, and it wasn't even like a weirdly gross US military propaganda film, which
No.
I'm kind of suspect of whenever I see the US military in a movie. They were just inept, but had a couple key information points. It was
Yeah.
just so bad.
And then they were also the ones that Tony Jaa could do his fight through.
yes.
So that would be a little bit more difficult to finagle into the fish market thing.
Yeah.
It was good to have Tony Jaa be able to beat up 100 guys in that single shot thing. So that's just we don't have to wrap up. I just,
Oh, okay.
you've just knocked something loose in my brain again. That one of the other
please.
things that the director obviously, wanted Tony Jaa to do that, wanted to have that that famous Tony Jaa
Mhm.
long shot thing. There's another
course.
part. There's like a very short scene where each of the main characters suddenly has a that front facing chest cam. It's called a snorri
Oh my
cam.
god. Oh, I hated that. So that was one of my notes too, but I crossed it out because I'm like, once they stopped doing it, I forgot about it. But like
And that's
the weird
it.
so
There was no reason to do it. You forget about it
No.
immediately.
the POV thing from Jake's perspective in that first fight, when Tony Jaa is like freeing him.
That too. Yeah.
Yeah, like it was all from his POV, but then we got like the attack from like the cameras clearly like they're acting against, and I'm like so many, like you said at the start, where like they had all their little bag of tricks that they picked up in film school,
Exactly.
and they just took that bag out and just dumped it on the canvas that was this 102-minute movie.
Exactly. Yeah, we have to
And
use
just-
every single one of these like I'm not going to say that they're like what's it called when something is not a cliche but just being used for the sake of being
Trope?
Not a trope but like a gimmick. Yeah. So
yeah.
I'm not saying that a snorri cam needs to be a gimmick. Like there's I looked up what they're called recently because I remembered I recently rewatched Requiem for a Dream, which I had seen a very long time ago. And there's an excellent use of a snorri cam in Requiem for a Dream. And it's also a single long shot. And so I knew that this was something that was a very specific piece of equipment, and to the point where the people who invented it named it after themselves. That's like, this is, you don't see it very often, whatever. And so it becomes a gimmick in a movie like this, where clearly this director was just like, and then we have to also use this one, and so now we'll give it to 4 different people and have them run through this jungle with it.
It was just not no wisdom whatsoever. They may have had the smarts, but like no. Then like when it switched to that POV of Jake, I'm like, okay, so we're gonna see the movie through his eyes. I'm okay with this, but then it stopped doing that almost immediately. I'm like, okay, that was strange. But then when they did the reverse and we see it from the perspective of just the thing attacking the people, I'm like, okay, so they had it for this scene because they wanted to show the effects, but they also, like, because they bought it for this and they took it to Myanmar. I didn't look to see where this movie was actually filmed. Maybe that would answer some questions, but like, just no. Like when I do
Cyprus and included a glimpse of ancient Bagan temples in Burma. So it was filmed in Cyprus.
Okay. Oh wow. Okay. So so like there's this, I'm not a filmmaker, so but like when I do my little things that I do, like I know exactly where my talents lie. I know what other people do. I don't immediately try to just mishmash everything that I see the other people do just to be sure I have it. Like it did
Yes,
it.
exactly.
I completely forgot about it. If we didn't talk about this movie right after watching the movie and we were just friends and we parted ways, this would have taken weeks to come up in our conversations about it.
It's the exact same thing. The as I said, like when you're in grade 9 and you're writing a script and you're in
Uh-huh.
drama class, and the drama
Yep.
class has that cool it has very few special props, but one of the props is made to look like a flickering TV. Well, you gotta use
Mm.
the flickering TV. You're gonna write that into your
Yep.
script, right? Because then you get to
Mm-hmm.
use the cool flickering TV prop, and that's like
Yes.
that's the and to a certain extent, as I said, if this was a movie aimed for kids, and I don't mean little kids, I mean like there were tons of movies I watched when I was like 12 that were adult movies, but they were stupid
Mm-hmm.
enough for like that I'm sure adults weren't impressed by them.
Like, yeah, good for him that I didn't look at the IMDb for that guy. I was like desperately trying to make a connection to the cast in any way. And
Yeah.
I stopped about halfway through. But like, so I wonder what this person like. I
So
just
I'll tell you
I have
because I
so many
looked him up.
questions. Oh
So
please.
he also helped write the screenplay. Uh
Oh,
yeah,
explains why
so
stuff didn't get
he's
cut.
right. That's a good point. Exactly. So the director co-wrote the screenplay as well, and he has also directed a couple of movies that are remakes of a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie. You
Boom.
mentioned him earlier. Exactly.
Yes.
I think it's called Kickbox or
Uh huh.
something like that. Let me look it up because now that I say that, no, it is Kickboxer. My God. Okay, so this man
Mm-hmm.
just names things the name of the martial art. So his next
Sure.
movie is going to be Muay Thai. His
Yep.
movie after that will be Judo.
Surprisingly, no Tony Jaa in in Muay Thai, but he's in Jiu Jitsu.
Right,
And
exactly. Yeah.
some of the research I did do though, but since you mentioned that right there, Nicolas Cage is actually a black belt in Jiu Jitsu.
Nicolas
Inverse
Cage
dot
is?
yes, and I'm quoting the article. Yes, that Nicolas Cage, who you may be surprised to know, has a black belt in Jiu Jitsu. The screen legend studied martial arts for years under the guidance of the sports royalty Royce Gracie. So,
Okay.
like,
I'm not surprised because that man has enough money and
yes,
eccentricity to do anything that he wants. He can
of
become
course.
a pro in anything. I'm also not surprised because I think that a celebrity becoming a black belt is probably easier than a guy
Oh,
off the street
yeah.
becoming a black belt. I think that the level of martial arts between these two people is probably different. I'm also not surprised just because I think that Nick Cage can do anything and can do no wrong. He's like my relationship with Nick Cage is problematic in many ways at this point, and so I'm not surprised. However, I'm a little bit surprised based on what I saw in the movie. I don't know. Like, I'm not saying that he was
Yes.
bad or anything, but I am saying that they needed to use stunt doubles for all of the like. It wasn't like he was like flying through the air like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon or anything. I'm just saying like even just he wasn't able to do the kicks that were like involved with spinning or anything like that. And he's only 57. I'm I'm kind
Yeah.
of my brain is kind of I'm very surprised about. I'm surprised I didn't know that about him. Did the director know that about him when when he was cast for this movie? Because again, jujitsu is on the ground. I'm not saying
Oh no.
you maybe don't need to be as fit to be a black belt in jujitsu. I'm not saying anything bad about people who are black belts in jujitsu. Lord knows I'm not a black belt in jujitsu. What? What's wrong?
Okay, this is to do with this, I promise. Nothing tragic. I'm looking at a thing and I wish I didn't, but so the history of jujitsu does not have a real definitive origin. Like that's fact. It's recorded in history. It has beginnings in feudal Japan as unarmed combat of samurai, but before
Well, no, it's
that,
just some
no one.
Japanese guy who moved to Brazil. It's Brazilian. Like a Japanese guy in Brazil made it up.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's called Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Okay. So I'm
Yeah.
looking at this article, And Dmitry Logothetis, the filmmaker,
Yeah.
he has black belts in Tang Soo Do and Kempo. Says in this article, it's thousands of years old, Jiu Jitsu. With that nebulous background, I thought it would be perfect to say it was delivered to us by an alien. That
Oh
was something
no.
I thought would work. End quote.
Okay. Um. Right. I kind of you did mention it, but I kind of forgot that that part of it is that this alien comes to Earth, has found these people, teaches them a martial art so that he can then fight them, which is very funny actually. He's traveled the universe and wants to fight someone so bad that he gives Earth this martial art. Okay, yeah, so that's super problematic in a lot of ways when it comes to that's like levels of like aliens built the pyramids levels of problematic.
Yes.
But something that's even funnier about that to me is that the insistence he has with the I thought it would work. Like there's ways you could read this. Like he's not saying and it did work.
No,
like
no,
I want
no.
to know the context of this interview where he's like I thought
So do
really
I.
guys,
I
I thought it was
will.
gonna work.
Yes.
Oh
Oh
my
my god,
god.
this is awful. This is just.
But
I
no,
mean, go
I
watch
also
it, everyone.
yeah, no, I mean that's not the point. That we're not here to sell tickets to any of these movies. But that's what I looked up. What what the origins of jiu-jitsu are, because it's called Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and I was like, well, what does that mean? Like, why is it Brazilian, and what does that have to do with Japanese martial arts? And
Hmm.
I googled this, and the person who uh founded it
Hmm.
is someone who he's a Brazilian naturalized Japanese yokuda and prize fighter. So he was a Japanese fighter who moved to Japan, or sorry, to Brazil, and invented this martial art. And so it's not very old. Obviously, there's it. I'm sure has influences from much older martial arts and everything like that. But what people
Sure.
study, like at you can go to a gym in my town, which is where my friend practices. What people study is called Brazilian Jiu Jitsu because of that person.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so that's as far as I can tell, that's the Brazilian Jiu Jitsu was first developed around 1920. Um, yeah. But yeah, it has a background in other Japanese martial
Okay.
arts, obviously.
So, but before that, it was an alien who
Right,
wanted to
exactly.
see what we could do with it, and if we, if we as a people, like we could have just like the implications of what this means to the world. Like, oh, like I get to a certain level of jujitsu in Midwest America. Someone approaches me, says, "Hey, I'm recruiting a team. I'm gonna need you in about 4.5 years. How good at jujitsu can you get?"
Yeah, and I mean, like maybe that's I like I'm
Like I
almost kind
said,
of like on his side when he's talking about like if I just kind of name it this one type of martial art, then we can still use other martial arts in the movie. Like there's nothing actually, saying that we're not allowed to use other martial arts in the movie. It's just specifically about jujitsu. But even the alien doesn't fight with jujitsu. Like there's one part with the alien when Nick Cage's character, when Wiley is fighting him, where they're down on the ground grappling. Like there's even the alien
yeah,
is not using it. Also, oh my god, the alien, oh, like there's fire everywhere, and then suddenly the alien sees a
afraid of
bigger
fire.
fire, and
Yep.
and it's revealed that the alien is weak to fire and cannot see past fire. So
It's yeah,
so
it's not only weak to fire, but it conceals things all around them, much like putting mud over you conceals you from predator.
there's another part where they wear these like silly cloaks, and
Oh,
someone gives Jake the cloak and is like, if you put this on you, he can't see you. And then that never happens. Like he never does that.
yeah, his erstwhile girlfriend, love interest or whatever, she's suiting him up in heavy air quotes, and like she starts to take his shirt off, and I thought, okay, here it is. Here's
In
the
front of
the
everybody
the
else. Everybody's just standing around and she just goes up to him silently and removes his shirt.
yeah, and then Frank Grillo shows up and he says, "I thought I told you to suit him up." I'm like, okay, calm down, bro.
Yeah.
It's just It's just nice. I guess the fibers help distribute heat in a way that they can't see you. I don't know. I thought the outfit was cool at the start
It
when
is
they're running
cool. It is
around.
cool. Yeah.
Like I thought, like, oh, cool, it's got layers, a little flowy. I'm like, wow, I really wish we could get capes or something to come back into fashion. And then this guy's telling me like, no, no, this is very high tech anti-alien detection device.
But
Put it
then
on him.
later, like at the climax of the movie, at the very last fight, when he's fighting the alien, the when things look bad for Jake, that's when it's like it's a surprise that the alien is disarmed by fire. So it's, I mean, did they know this about this like heat thing for the alien, which is exactly a ripoff from Predator, as you pointed out. Like it's there are many parts in this movie that are
Yep.
lifted from Predator.
And that's
From the
fair.
Predator
I mean,
franchise.
so yeah, and like there's a lot used, borrowed, and stolen. And like I can't say if I was a filmmaker I wouldn't do the exact same thing, but there's a fantasy series called Aragon. Aragorn? No,
Mm-hmm.
Aragon.
Mm-hmm.
And I read them when I was much younger, and I'm like, oh wow, this reads just like Star Wars and Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings. The author straight up says I had a lot of inspiration from Star Wars, Harry Potter, and Lord of the Rings. And I'm like, oh my god, I can't take it seriously anymore. But
Right.
I'm looking at this guy's stuff. This started as a comic book, so that
That he
if they had
wrote.
just put that he wrote the screen, yeah. So
Yes.
if him and his boy Jim McGrath, writing partner, would have just written at the top, um, inspired by comic book Jiu Jitsu adaptation, anything, if they had just said, just it can't have cost much to have a text box.
Two of my favorite movies of all time were movies that I saw when I was a child, and very little has topped them. One is the 1980 or the 1990 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, which if you want to
Yes.
see some good martial arts choreography, and not to mention every other aspect of that movie is excellent, but these are martial artists who are working in gigantic Jim Henson suits, so it's already like way better than this. And then another movie that I absolutely love is Three Ninjas. These are children who are doing martial
Yes.
arts. Both of these movies, and I'm not looking through these in rose-colored glasses, have better, more fun martial arts than what is going on in Jiu Jitsu. Even with Nicolas Cage. Like, even with Nick Cage doing some kind of silly things, like, it's just not, I don't know. I guess maybe all the fights suffer from the exact same thing, where they're all too long. If they were all shorter, they would be punchier. Not literally, but like, I would be more invested in them because they'd be shorter. They go on for way too long and I don't care. And they're not exciting. There's nothing fun. They don't like make good use of their surroundings. It's just all I don't know. It's just all very amateurish.
That's I think that's the best thing is like it's just amateur hour with this entire thing, and the only
Right.
reason that we're being subjected to it is because we both suffer from a fondness for one man.
Right. And so like amateur doesn't need to I'm not trying to say that amateur is necessarily like always going to be bad either. Like amateur
Sure.
doesn't need to be bad. Like the budget for Three Ninjas, granted it was in 1992, was 2.5 million. Like
Oh wow.
yeah, whatever, and I mean like it also has Victor Wong in it, so fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Um
Yep.
uh Great movie. Uh but like
No,
the
I'm a big
choreography,
fan.
yeah, exactly. So like the level of choreography, the level of like actual just martial arts, I just the movie, the money went to places that I don't think it should have gone to, I guess, in this movie, because it didn't it didn't go to the story. I guess it went to Nick Cage and Tony Jaa, um maybe to a lesser extent the other guy, Frank Grillo, and the other ones.
Yep.
uh I assume that Alain Moussi is making a decent bit of cash here, but it didn't go to the fight choreography. Um,
No.
it didn't go to the editing. It didn't, right? Like it's just, uh, I wanted the bar was low. I wanted more,
Yeah.
because I feel like it's not hard. Well, it's easy for me to say this, but I feel like it's not hard to make a martial arts movie that's at least fun for the stupid martial arts part of it.
Yes.
And I didn't get that from this.
Bottom line, we didn't even get. I think I got enough Nicolas Cage, but we should have gotten a whole lot more to sell. Like, we come in buying whatever Nicolas Cage is selling, but
Right.
like if they had given Nicolas Cage, like, because there was a point in the latter 2/3 of the movie where they're just kind of walking around, looking up at the sky occasionally, tracking a comet, and Nicolas Cage is walking there, his wild hair pulled up in a bun. He's got a bandana.
He's wearing that bandana on now, yeah.
Yeah, he's got the bandana. He's got the glasses. He looks like he just walked out of Nam.
Right, he looks like Apocalypse Now. Exactly.
Apocalypse Now. Yeah. And just walking around like trying to help the amnesiac come to terms. Like, no, it's not what you don't remember that's important. Focus is important. And boy, I wish Nicolas Cage would have like dropped his sunglasses and like looked at the camera for a moment.
Right, yeah.
At the director, and I'm just like, he's like, there were parts of this that were so like almost.
Yes, I agree.
And then like,
I still enjoyed him. I think they did him really dirty with his final scene, his final fight. I think that was not. I mean, but for all the reasons that I've already mentioned, that the fighting was not the best part of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then they reveal at the end, in yet another. You don't remember? No, I don't remember. I have fucking amnesia. Stop asking me if I remember. They reveal that Nick Cage, that Wiley, is Jake's father. And they have this scene where Wiley, or Jake apparently remembers, he's remembering the scene of this man with long hair sparring with a child. And this is supposed to be Jake remembering what it was like growing up with his dad. And it's done in slow motion and it's all hazy and dreamlike and everything. And it delivers absolutely no pathos.
No.
And all it does is raise questions where you're like, why the fuck wouldn't you talk to your son before you're certain you're about to die and he has amnesia? Like, why wouldn't you try to do so then I'm thinking back and I'm like, okay, so he's not him from the future, which at that point I would have preferred. Because, like, even if it would have added another layer of ridiculousness in the movie, at least then the conversation that they have when they first meet would have made more sense to me. Like, this is his son, and he's not saying anything. He doesn't know that he has amnesia. Like, it's like, it just, it makes absolutely no sense. It was like the most, like, now we'll throw in Star Wars. Like, now we'll throw in a big dad reveal at the end. And like I said, oh, you don't remember? He's your dad. Oh, I don't remember. And now he's dead. So thanks for telling me now.
Yeah, we're just gonna.
Dead. Remember when I arrived and said I don't remember anything? That would have been the time to be like, okay, I'm your girlfriend from before, which again they didn't have that conversation. This is your father. Like you don't. This how do you talk to someone who has amnesia? Like this is not at all how you talk to him.
Show me a picture, show me something, and I don't really I like that this okay I like when movies don't spoon feed information, but this kind of movie absolutely would have benefited from occasionally Wiley calling him son, just like old man talking to younger man, calling him son, like anything. To provide a nugget of pathos, as you said.
But then it would have undermined what is to them a big like reveal of this amnesiac. And this is yet again just like using the Snorri cam and the GoPro and every other trick in the book. This movie needed it has aliens introducing something to the planet. It has the U.S. military. It has martial arts. It has someone not realizing that this is his dad. It has amnesia. It has a very shoehorned love story. It's just it has betrayal and it's I wish I could recommend it even just as like a kind of a fun thing. If there was like a supercut online of just Nick Cage, I would say watch that if there's like a YouTube supercut of Nick Cage's parts, because that's the best part of the movie.
I think you kind of nailed it earlier when you said if someone asks you to stretch a 22-minute episode of Power Rangers into 100 minutes, like if you go into this with that and
Mm.
that level of detachment from stakes, from consequence, like I think I could jive with it just fine even without Nicolas Cage. Like it just but like it with any tiny amount of scrutiny and this thing just like crumbles.
You're
Just
right. You're right. If you adjust your expectations to the point where you're like,
all the way
this is going to
down.
be, yeah, like even farther down than I had already adjusted mine. I'm not trying to say that I thought this was going to be like, groundbreaking or anything. I knew it was going to be dumb. I
Sure.
was excited about the martial arts, and I was
Yeah.
excited about the Nick Cage. And I still enjoyed those parts. I still enjoyed Nick Cage's parts and some of the martial arts parts. I don't need to ever see it again.
Nope.
And if you're going into a movie with the really low, and maybe like there is something to be said about watching a movie for a podcast thinking, oh, I'm going to talk about that and I'm going to talk about that, and then just actually sitting down and watching a movie at nighttime, with a beer, and you're just having a silly time, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's a different frame of mind and all of this, and that is part of, and to bookend this episode, I guess, is to bring it back to what I was saying about the difference between someone who podcasts on a movie that they really love versus someone who, or maybe that same person is podcasting on a movie that they watched for the podcast. And
Hmm.
your frame of mind is so much when it comes to all of this stuff. So if you made it this far and you didn't shut it off because you were like, oh, I want to see the movie first, and you've heard me say a few times now that you shouldn't watch it, maybe you should if you can kind of be in the right headspace and really like adjust your expectations, and
Yeah.
you might have a better time with it. I feel like if we were to make a list of all like 10 movies that Nick Cage has come out with in the past like few years, which it's easily 10 movies, um and you were to watch those all within a few days or something as like a marathon, I think that a lot
Hmm.
of the criticisms that I have about movies like this would really fade, because as you said, they're not meant to be scrutinized to this
Yeah.
extent. I don't know if you ever listened to, Don, the episode of Netflix where Dylan and I talk about Mortal Kombat.
Yes, I have. Yep.
So we actually that's 2 episodes on that. That's the longest episode, which had to be split into 2 episodes of the Netflix podcast. And we were really stupid. We thought that we should talk about every character, because
Sure.
it's like the game, you can pick
They're
different characters,
iconic. Yeah,
whatever.
yeah. Well, they're supposed to be iconic characters.
Right. That's right. Exactly. Yeah.
And that movie was
And
so short. Was it even 90 minutes? Like when I watched it, it like zipped by.
God, that's
I
probably true. Our podcast on it is probably longer than the fucking movie. Oh man, that's something to think about. Oh, but yeah, the reason I brought it up is because it's a perfect example of things that were never supposed to be held up to this level of scrutiny, right? And it's
Sure.
it's that to this, and the that's why I do like looking up the director and looking up things about them, because um this you could watch this movie thinking one of two things: that one, the it's just a kind of it was supposed to be a money grab, and it was kind of churned out or whatever. But I really
Yeah.
do think that this director really cares about this, and he co-wrote the comic book, apparently the
Yeah.
screenplay,
Dude,
and
yeah,
directed it.
dude adapted his own comic. He doesn't care about what any of us think.
Yeah,
I feel like he ticked off a box in his life, and
yeah,
I guess more power to him.
right, exactly. And in a lot of ways, Nick Cage excels at taking those types of risks and those types of
Yep.
roles that a lot of actors maybe shy away from, and that's probably why it's a self-fulfilling prophecy at this point, where he gets probably offered more roles like that. um but to me, that's just another reason to love him, because it's like he's making other people's dreams come true. You know what I mean? Like, he's the, sure,
Yeah.
I'll be your big name on your and I do think that the the character was probably written for him, because it's perfect for him,
Yeah.
in a lot of the ways that a lot of Nick Cage roles are. So Yeah, so that's me trying to end it on like a positive note about it. But was there anything
Yeah.
else you wanted to say about, speaking of long uh talking more about the movie than the actual runtime of the movie?
All of the criticisms are all there. All of my feelings of frustration are totally there. I still come away from this movie like this conversation was delightful. I think this is the first time we've chatted, so like this is special to me.
Oh,
Uh,
that's nice. Yeah, it's special to me too.
the movie itself, like my expectations were exactly where they were at, and I feel like story aside, everything else was met. It's just like I went in thinking that the story was going to be just a tiny bit better when I heard so many themes being bandied about.
Right.
And then where it fell short was like my own thing of like there's an immortal and it's Nicolas Cage because he looks like he's been around for centuries
Ah,
just
there we go.
bumming
See,
around in
so
that cave.
if you hadn't watched the trailer, Don.
Yep. Yep. So yeah, I'll go. I'll walk away from this conversation, realize like, and I don't watch trailers for the most part. I'll skip a trailer, but like, I had no clue what I was getting into with this because, like I
Right.
said,
Yeah.
Nicolas Cage wasn't even in the Netflix's
The poster. Yeah.
cover poster, and I'm like, I need a little more before I try to convince someone else to watch this.
Right. Well, we do. I mean, that says something about how differently we consume media now, right? Like,
Yeah.
like as I mentioned earlier about the DVDs with the chapter headings and stuff. Like,
Yep.
seeing this poster, and then also we've talked about this on Netflix where they have those three adjectives to describe the movie or whatever that
Hmm.
are, in my opinion, usually pretty suspect. But these are things that
Slick.
you didn't have. Yes, like I guess like it's not an ugly movie. Like they obviously did. It doesn't look. It doesn't look cheap. I've seen movies look cheaper than this.
Right. Yeah.
The CGI is not great, but the actual and you know uh that's probably a, what is it, like Windows Movie Maker like filter or something that makes everything
Yeah.
look better than it actually is. So
Yep.
I shouldn't maybe give it too much credit in that regard, but I'm trying to give it just a little bit of credit.
Yeah. The
Um,
sets were the sets looked great. Cyprus, I didn't
that's
know
where
it
the
was filmed
money
in
went.
Cyprus till you said like exactly. And
Yeah,
well, his name, Dimitri, I forgot it
Logothetis.
already.
Yeah,
Logothetis. Like okay, he's probably not far from Cyprus in general. Like I will give it that it wasn't that kind of sci-fi film where it looks like the 10 feet around them was real and then anything past that they were in a sound stage in Vancouver.
right, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So like
yeah.
the vistas were great to look at. The comet, I'm like supremely personally envious that they got such a cool ass looking comet every 6 years.
Yeah, it was very
I
kind
don't
of
I
like
don't
video gamey.
Yeah, yeah, that's probably
Yeah,
why I wish I had it.
yeah.
But so like scientifically, I don't know if it was that big how good things would be for us, but it was
Right.
certainly visually appealing. Everything else set aside.
Yeah. I wonder how much of it would have been, because now that I'm thinking about it, what was the point to having the amnesia part to it? Like, couldn't we have just had this cool thing where like
Yeah.
every 6 years this alien comes and we need, and this year we've decided we need to actually do
Yeah.
something about it?
If you're gonna
Um,
steal from Mortal Kombat, saying the 6 years
yeah,
has the timer has come down, the hourglass has ended, 6 years is up. We must
yeah.
gather all of the ambiguously martial artist
That all
people
speak English
together,
for some reason.
all speaking English.
Yeah.
Yeah, like he, like to fix this movie, what is a even longer conversation than we've been going for already. But like just a quick wipe would have just been like, oh, I just ran away from this alien. Help me.
Right.
Boom.
Yeah.
That negates so much, and you still get your slaughter scene. You still get the weird like, oh, he's on drugs. Are you the mule? Or for whatever
Right.
reason, like,
or or get rid of all of that and just say, and Jake is like, listen, my dad's getting old, I'm in love with this woman and I'd like to start a
hmm
family. I want to put an end to this bullshit. Why do we put up with this every 6 years an
sure,
alien comes down and fucks some stuff up? I'm gonna
Yeah.
figure out how to send him back to this portal for good. Fine, whatever. That's and then the U.S. military comes in and annoys us because that's what they're good at.
Yes,
So.
they did provide the grenades that helped do the killing blow.
Oh my god, I forgot about that.
I just remembered that because like the 6 seconds after it's wounded and it's not fully healed, I'm like, okay, so what they're gonna when I went into that,
why wouldn't they just put the fire?
Yes, they put the fire in him, and then did a
industrial complex.
Yes, and then he Jean-Claude Van Damme kicked him back into the portal. Yeah, and he almost like okay. Yeah, I'm done nitpicking.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. Oh my god. Okay, yeah. The ending of the movie is infuriating. Yeah, and I was very glad when it came finally.
I want to find these comics for really cheap and read them and just like hate tweet them. Not hate tweet.
I wonder how much they look like the storyboards in the movie. That'd be interesting to know too. We have a lot of things to follow up on, but somehow we've been talking about this for a lot longer than even the movie goes on. So speaking about endings, let's wrap this up, Don.
Sure,
is there anything that you'd like to shout out or anything that you'd like to tell people to check out?
Yeah, please. If you like my particular brand of humor, I also podcast, as most white men in their 30s tend to do. I do most of my podcasting is tabletop role-playing games. I do I'm the GM storyteller of a sci-fi science fantasy space fantasy game called Hexgrid Heroes. You can find that at Hexgrid Heroes on Twitter.
It's a perfect segue from what we're talking about.
Absolutely.
But I can tell you that all of the storytelling that goes on in that podcast makes a heck of a lot more sense than what we just talked about.
It does. I promise. Yeah. One thing about me when telling my own stories, like I can shit talk a storyteller, but like I also stay within the realm of my abilities, and I tell a pretty straightforward story that's pretty easy to follow, but it's good. if it's like Dungeons and Dragons, but we're in space. There's tons of aliens. There's magic, and yeah, that's about it. That's most of my stuff. Just follow me on Twitter at Hexgrid Heroes for all my fun stuff. But that's the gist of it.
Thanks so much, Don, and thank you so much for listening. You can find me on Twitter at Rattling Cage Pod, and Facebook as Rattling the Cage Podcast. That's where you can send all the memes and Nick Cage news. Leaving a review and subscribing is also a huge help. And you can also support the podcast directly at ko-fi.com/Diezyn. So that's ko-fi.com/DIEZYN. And I'll leave you with these immortal words.
I can fly too.